How you doing, guys? Today I am working on my TVS 90 Tecumseh vertical shaft engine, which is the original engine to my, I believe it's like a well, according to this, it has 80 casted into it, I should say, sorry. So I'm assuming this is a 1980 garden power push mower. It also doesn't have the safety shutoff bar, so it's got to be what, pre-84-ish at minimum. Overall, the engine's in pretty good shape. So what I thought I would go over is what I do to kind of like freshen up an engine without actually rebuilding it. The bore is pretty solid. There's no ridge. The valves, they have no play in the guides, and they seem to seal. There's good spring tension still. So there's really, on the surface, no reason to rebuild this engine. But for today, what we're going to do is we're going to put a new set of points, a new condenser. The flywheel was actually kind of a real pain in the neck to get off. This is about a week's worth of healing time, but I took a big chunk out of my finger. I already checked the valve lash. It's at 9 10/1000ths according to the manual, which I have right here. Valve clearance for this is supposed to be 4 to 10/1000ths both. So we're at 9 and 10. We're at the higher end of it, but we're within specification, so I'm going to leave it alone. Going to put in a new gasket. Cleaned all the carbon and crud off the valves, the deck, and the piston, as well as I cleaned the head off. So all that carbon and crap is off it, and I got a new head gasket. So we'll be installing that. I got a new carburetor kit for it and a new float, which was the culprit of the entire issue with this engine, or at least, excuse me, my diagnosis with the crankcase being filled with fuel and the float being filled with fuel. That was the main cause of this engine to stop running. Got new bolts for the exhaust. We're going to set the magneto. Basically, we're going to do a general tune-up, which I would expect any reputable lawnmower service would have done back in the day. Now, today, you know, they run like auto dealerships with like $100 hour. You know, it's like, why would you bother? You know, and I can tell you, at least the small engine repair shops around my area, they do a half-assed job, you know, slap and send type of stuff. So today, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to take some care. I did clean all the surfaces. I cleaned out the tappet area. Like I said, I cleaned the surface here. So we're pretty much all set and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the camera in the other direction, and we're going to start tearing apart these. Well, I'm going to take the points out, but we're going to put the points in the new condenser in. I got the old points and condenser out. The condenser, I'm pretty sure, it says Tecumseh on it. I'm pretty sure that's the original condenser to this motor. The points I don't know. They are dark. The part number is right there, which is 30547. I happen to have a set of points in stock. Now these are I bought these points for an H60. So this engine here takes an H60 point set, which is the part number I just said, which is the 30547. So that's all set. I do have a brand new Oregon condenser here. Made in Taiwan, so hopefully that'll work. The reason why I'm swapping all these parts is, even though the engine ran, my God, it's such a pain in the neck to get that flywheel off. I said, you know what? I would hate to have the condenser, you know, poop the bed or something go on with the points. Pretty simple. This piece right here, this plastic piece, slides down into this area. This little piece arm right there, that's what rides up against the cam, all right? And then there's obviously a screw that passes through this slot right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of drop that in, get the screws set up. The condenser, actually this little piece right there, the screw passes through that and holds the condenser right in this area, and then the wire runs around and contacts to the bolt or the screw right there. I do have a nut, I do have a little contact, I'll show you those in a minute, and then we'll set the points to 20 thousandths. everything is preliminarily hooked up. I got my new condenser in place, screws just snugged down. The original one, that one there, had the wire come up around here and then come over. I decided to go a little different. I went underneath everything, came back around, and then I came up and I hit the points bolt or the points contact right here. There's a washer that goes up against the plastic. There's the condenser wire. Then I have this little contact here because this goes to the throttle. There's a wire that goes to the throttle for the shutoff. That's what grounds the points. And then there's a nut that holds it all in. The points are set up so there's a bolt, there's a screw right there that holds the adjuster piece or the adjuster part of the points, which is this side. This is the actuator arm. You need, when you're setting up your points, you need to have your points set up to this dot on the points cam. That's theoretically full open, which you see right there. This needs to be set to 20 thousandths. So one of the things, if you notice, is if the screw goes righty-tighty, if I set this to 20 thousandths and tighten down the screw, that's going to pull the point contact away from my feeler gauge just a hair. So I'm going to start off by using a 19 thousandths feeler gauge. So I'll loosen this up, let that close up against the 19 thousandths feeler gauge, and then I'll tighten down the bolt. Don't have to ramrod it down there, just need to make it snug plus just a little bit, okay? And that should open up the points, and that 19 thousandths should slide out very easy. You get a 20 thousandths feeler gauge, and you should just have just a little bit of drag. Now, if it's still too loose, then I'll loosen this up. I'll use an 18 thousandths feeler gauge, tighten it down, check it with 20 thousandths. And then once we have that, then we can button up the top of the ignition system. Okay, that took a while and a lot of back and forth. And, you know, I always get nervous tightening and loosening and tightening these screws, especially in aluminum. You don't want to wreck that, but this is 20 thousandths. Whoop, there it is. Yeah, that's mint. I ended up having to use a 17, then tightening it down, and then I got to 20. So we're all set there. One of the things we need to do is we need to get the cover, which is right here. It even says 20 thousandths on the cover for the points. We just gotta go ahead and drop this back on just like that. And then this little pinch bar goes over the top of that like this and snaps in. The ignition system is all set. I'll go ahead and put this, put the gasket, new gasket, screw that in, and then we'll start dealing with the carburetor. It's the next day, and let's take a look. What I did last night was I just went ahead and filled up the bore with some oil. It's 30 weight. I just went doing a little leak down test, and it really didn't leak almost any of the oil. I just squirted it in there. So that's a pretty good sign. That might mean that this thing might actually run and not smoke, which would be kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and get that oil out of the bore. In theory, I was hoping that it was going to lubricate the rings, but it looks like it's holding still. All right, that's a good thing. All right, so let's go ahead and get the carburetor together. All right, I laid out all the parts to the carburetor here on the workbench. These parts right here are a rebuild kit, if you want to call it, from eBay. All of this will be used except for these two little fiber washers. They're theoretically the bowl gaskets here at the bottom. Neither one of them fit the nut, the bowl nut that goes on. So I just soaked this old one in WD-40 to try to revive it, and we're going to run with it because, I mean, I don't have another one. But the needle and the seat are right here. The thing that's interesting about this seat is one side is kind of, you know, has a rib or a little bit of a flange on it. The other side is perfectly flat. when I took this carburetor apart, the original one down deep inside there, okay, had the ribs up. And I was like, oh, all right, that's guess that's how it goes back together. Well, wrong. Because if you look at the manual, the rib side, insert this face first. So that has to go down into the carburetor first. And the flat side is up for the needle. So I'm just going to go ahead. Oops, there it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a little WD-40 on there just to lubricate it. It says to lubricate it also in the manual. I'm going to go ahead and push that all the way down. The next thing I'll do is I'll get the brand new float. This was the whole culprit of the entire problem with this engine. And I'll get the float. I clean the pin. I'll get the needle. We'll hang it, and then we'll take a look at where we fall. This carburetor has no adjustment screws on it, so this is a one and done kind of situation. Set the float, put the bowl on it, and it should be all set and ready to rock. So after a little bit of this and a little bit of that, I do have the float in place. You can see that it's not level with the bottom or the base of the carburetor. So I am going to have to make a couple little adjustments, get that leveled out. So the distance, the bottom of the float should be parallel with the bottom of the carburetor. Once I get that, and that little tab right there sitting on top of the needle, I'll just bend that up a little bit just to lower the float. Once I get that all done, I will stretch the upper bowl gasket on, put that in place, take our bowl, putting it in such a position that the pivot is in the lower part of it, snug down this nut, and then we'll start putting it back onto the intake. Now that I have these bolts holding the carburetor to the intake, and I got it, they're snug, make them snug, and then just a little bit more. These things, again, these are bolts that don't need to be set to 500 foot-pounds. There's no need for that. What I want to do now is just kind of figure out the linkage. Now, right here is in the manual, the top hole of the governor arm that's coming off the block has to go to the far side, or the far hole on the throttle. So we basically going to use that hole right there and this hole right there, and this is the little governor throttle arm, if you want to call it, and it goes in this position according to the manual. If we look, the bend is down, so it's going to get hooked in there like that, and this gets hooked in through the top like that. Actually, I tried doing it. It's a little funky. You got to bring it in from the side, get it hooked in there. Once I get that done, the next thing I need to do is bolt this apparatus to the top of the carburetor using these two slots in those two holes. And I got the screws right there. Tighten that down, snug it down, and then the opposing, where the heck is it? I want to get it so you guys can see this, because this is classic Tecumseh. Where is it? There it is. All right, right there. This little arm with that little hole, okay, that's where this piece goes in. It goes in like that. So I'm going to have to bend and twist and, finagle it to get all the links together. And then I have the gasket, the intake gasket, that goes on the engine block right here. I just got to go get the two bolts, and then I'm going to just go ahead and hook up all the links and then bolt it to the engine, and we should be that's pretty much it. So this engine's almost all back together. Carburetor's installed in classic Tecumseh fashion. These bolts that hold the intake and the carburetor on, there's play in the whole thing. It kind of goes up and down, so when I put it in there, or when I bolted it tight, I made sure the carburetor was level, or at least parallel with everything on the motor. We got the throttle piece hooked up, the governor arms are hooked up. This one is going to the top of the carburetor. This one here goes to this link right here. This is the throttle. I went ahead and made sure, you can hear it. Made sure the kill switch worked. I hooked up the wire to the points. This wire here goes to the coil, which is right there. I got to clean that up, and then we'll put the flywheel on, and we'll set that. Next thing I want to do is I want to put the head on. So get a paper towel, get some good quality brake parts cleaner. Make sure you wipe down the head. Everything is good and clean. You clean everything around here really good. Make sure there's no oil, no debris. Get yourself a fresh head gasket. Get all your bolts nice and clean. And then we're going to go ahead and torque the bolts in place. For an engine like this, you got to torque the head and you got to torque the flywheel. Everything else can just be kind of tight. It'll be fine. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and line everything up, torque the head on. I'll use my little baby bar wrench. I'll get the torque spec out of the manual, and that will be done. Head is installed. I went ahead and installed the flywheel. Pretty simple, just the key lines it up on the shaft. I set the main nut to 31 foot-pounds. I think the book said 35, but 31 is good enough. Next, I went ahead and put the armature on. I sanded the fronts of the laminates so they're clean. Just swing the magnet around, aiming to the armature. Then I just let the armature, the bolts loose, just let it, kind of be drawn in by the magnet with this card in the middle or between them. And that sets the appropriate air gap. So I should be able to just twist this gently, and that card should come out. And there it is. And then here is the air gap that we need. Perfect. It doesn't rub or anything. So that's all set. Next up, going to just get the plug, gap it, put it in, hook up the wire, hook up this kill wire right here. I'll just put that on there on that. Gotta just shave down one of the bolts I got new bolts for the muffler. Shave that down, tighten it in, put the blower cover on, which is all clean and ready to go. And then we'll get the gas tank in place, and I think we'll put it on the lawnmower and try to start it up, even though the air box may not be on it. There it is, the 1980 TVS 90, 3.5 horsepower Tecumseh engine. We got everything all put back in. I got brand new bolts for the muffler because the old ones were so, you could just see how the exhaust, the exhaust just ate this bolt down. So this is on the verge of snapping. So I went ahead and got some new bolts. Now these are China bolts, so I did put some anti-seize on them so that way they won't theoretically just, self-fuse to the block over the years. I did put a little bit of anti-seize on the head bolts so that way I know I got a good torque out of them. Gas tank is on. Of course, I cut the fuel line a little short, but it's solidly mounted. It's going to be fine. I got the air box on with a new air cleaner. I did not impregnate this with oil yet. I'm just going to get the engine started before I make a big mess like that. But everything here looks real good. So I'm going to go ahead, snap the lid onto the air box, and mount this to the lawnmower. And then hopefully you'll see me pull the starter and it'll start.